Right, welcome to our third and final part for today's video, where we're going to be covering nerves and the nervous system a little bit. As with all things biology related, let me just put a disclaimer out there that I am still not good at biology. And yeah, it's just the way life is. I'm not good at biology. I think it makes my tummy queasy. So what I know of biology is a physics application of it. So let's look at that for nerves. So the first thing that we're going to say in general is that the human's nervous system still has a lot of mystery inside of it. We don't know every single little thing about it. We've plotted it out. We have a general idea as to how it works, but we don't know everything. We do know it works based on electric signals that react to a stimulus from usually the outside world. Now you can have internal stimulus happening as well. And that's when you have internal pains or just, going beyond what you normally experience. But we're going to just focus on signals from the outside world. Just understand inside ones happen as well. So neurons are the cells that are responsible for passing electric signal. So here we have a schematic of a neuron. They're much longer than this, but basically we have kind of this really long cell. And it's got a nucleus, it's got some core things that cells have, but it has these weird little dendrite things hanging off of it. And it's real long. And then at the end, you have nerve endings. And so the way that the nervous system is set up is that you have neurons kind of interacting with each other through what is referred to as a synapse. So the interaction between the two is a synapse. So somehow a signal at, let's call this the top of your cell, has to travel through the whole thing. There's going to be some twitching happening at the end of the nerve endings, and that's going to go to the next one, and it's going to repeat the process. That is a really, really rough way to explain how the nervous system works. And so the thing that's traveling down the cell is an electric signal. So with this electric signal, it's going down the cell, and it's, that's going to eventually make it to the brain, and the brain knows how to process this, and it's just like, that's hot, or shouldn't have cut myself with the potato peeler. Stop picking at the scab, even though it feels good. Like something along those lines is what the brain is able to interpret. And yes, for those of you who are wondering, I did cut myself with a potato peeler, and I am currently picking the scab. So let's talk about the neuron kind of, even though it's not a typical cell, it has some properties that are similar to other cells. And that is that it has a positive charge on the outside of the cell and a negative charge on the inside of the cell. And so with this, we kind of saw this similar idea when we talked about the heart and how it pulses, and we can see the potential difference. Right? The heart is made of cells, so it makes sense that cells have a similar property. And the potential difference between the two sides of the cells is anywhere from 60 millivolts to negative 90 millivolts, depending on the type of cell, where the cell is located, and what it is, and so forth. So what happens, again, this is a very physics way of looking at what happens inside of a cell, is you have a diffusion of potassium and of chlorine. So chlorine is going to go inwards into the cell membrane, and potassium is going to go outwards. And this is going to be what results in a charged membrane. So the important part of a neuron is that it responds to stimulus and it conducts an electric signal along the length. So we want to look at how that electric signal is conducted along the length of this cell. So the stimuli can be, thermal based, it could be chemical, it could be pressure, it could be light, it can, so some of the neurons are able to actually do the sensing, and the other stimuli can actually be from other neurons. Now, obviously, this is not an all-encompassing list of stimuli. That's just an example of what it can be. So if the stimulus is strong enough, it's going to create a voltage large enough that it passes a threshold, and it's going to travel down the long part of the neuron or the axon. So the way that might look in terms of a potential graph. So here we have our potential in millivolts as a function of time, where time is given in milliseconds. So you have a resting potential. It's roughly 70 millivolts inside of a human. And this is where nothing is happening. This is the ideal, the kind of the equilibrium position, so to speak, of the neuron. Some sort of stimulus is going to happen where there's going to be a really large change in potential. So here we're going, almost to 40 millivolts. So we're changing over 100 millivolts in potential. When you're only dealing with, really, really tiny numbers, 100 is a lot, right? So we're having a huge change, and then it's going to go, the stimuli passes, and it's going to take a minute, and then it'll go back to the resting potential. So in this time where we're not resting, we're at the action potential portion. So let's kind of look at how this actually happens. So why does our potential actually go forward with this change? And that has to do with the permeability of the membrane of our neuron changing. So how easy it is for those potassium and chlorine ions to go back and forth is what's changing our potential across the system. So here we have our cells, we have our membrane, and we're going to have a point of stimulation. And so instead of potassium going in, because it's a little bit bigger, sodium goes into the cell. And so where sodium enters the cell, we're now going to have a positive interior. Well, sodium's not supposed to, necessarily be there. And so, something's going to happen where the cell's going to have to try to return to normal. So basically what happens is nearby charges are attracted to the new opposite charge that is next to it. And they're going to switch places. And they're going to switch places where the action, so that changed sign, is going to move towards the next set of neurons. And so with that changed charge, it's going to move through the cell, and that motion is going to, acts as the electric motion inside of the cell. So it can happen pretty fast. Once it gets to the nerve end, there's going to be an interaction with the nerve next to it, and the same type of motion is going to occur through the next cell. So this has been kind of a really rough look at the electrical conduction in the human nervous system. Again, we don't know exactly what's going on, and I am by no means an expert in the nervous system, so I've probably explained stuff in not the best method. All right, so this is going to wrap it up for today's lecture. If you haven't already done so, please make sure to take the lecture quiz. And if you have any questions, let me know. If it's about the nervous system, I will do my best, but no guarantees that the answers are going to be good, let alone correct.